Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. I recently just learned how the pawn moves in chess. It's pretty straightforward. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin from Awakened Realms. We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review. In Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin from Awakened Realms, 1 to 4 players take on the roles of various adventurers as they unravel a great story mystery and attempt to battle the forces of evil and the weirdness. Now, this is a story-driven game. There's a lot of spoilers here. There's 10 chapters. I've just played through some of it, and I don't want to give away the stuff I've already unlocked. So I'm just going to give kind of a very, very bare basic look at gameplay, and then I'll tell you my thoughts. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to choose an adventurer. You pick one of 4 different characters. They have, of course, different abilities. You have your character board, and along the side, you have space for either 1 or 2 cubes in those various abilities. There will be opportunities to upgrade those spaces as the game progresses with various other little things you can put along the side of the board. But you have a number of location cards, and they're kind of two-sided to begin with. You have the weirdness. This is kind of this evil, darkness, sinister stuff going on, and you can flip that to the other side, in which case it's kind of bright and normal. But what you do is essentially you start on that location. There are, on any locations, maybe in some of them, there are things you have to do immediately, or there are actions you can take specific to that location. Now, one of the things you're trying to do is activate waystones. Now, these waystones go up in the corner of a card, and any cards that you kind of move to that are adjacent, if that waystone's activated, these are all going to be clear, free of the weirdness. But they may go away after a while, in which case the weirdness will return. But when you go to a location, in addition to taking the actions you can do there, you can go on an exploration. Now, it's free just to go on the exploration. And what you do is you consult the exploration journal. This is a giant, thick book in which you look at kind of the basic story of what you found in that location, and then you can pick from different choices. Some of these require that you spend actions. Now, on your board, you kind of have 3 different tracks. You have your energy, which essentially means your actions you can take. You have your health level, and if your health level decreases, so too does your energy. And then you also have kind of a terror. This is negative effects, and you want to keep that one down low. But you can, at some of these, journal spots, you can go ahead and spend energy in order to maybe go search for something, or talk to somebody, or have some kind of an adventure. And then what you do is it tells you to consult the specific verse in that location. So you turn to that verse, and it tells you how things play out. And again, there may be other choices there. There may be actions you can take and things you can do. So there's all sorts of things that play out within each of those locations. And you can potentially go through all of them if you want to spend the time and energy in that location to do so. Now, frequently, what will happen is in a lot of these locations, you will gain certain traits. Now, you have a sheet of paper that has all the traits and the numbers listed in them. So it may say you gain this trait 2 or this trait 7, and you just tick off that box next to that trait for that box. And that means in future explorations, if you have that trait, you may gain certain advantages or it may take you down a certain path. Now, as you are moving to these different locations and you are exploring in the journal, you may encounter different people you have to negotiate with or you have to battle against. There may be encounter cards you have to draw that are enemies or opportunities or things you can have. But you have two basic decks. You have a diplomacy deck and you have a combat deck. And how things play out in diplomacy or combat is if you have, say, a diplomatic mission, a diplomatic scenario, you place the card out there that you are attempting to negotiate with, representing the people or whatever you're attempting to negotiate with, and then you draw 3 cards from your diplomacy deck. What you're trying to do is, as a party, you can take turns and you place these cards next to that initial card, and you're looking for kind of key sections of the card to line up that will advance certain things. In diplomacy, you're trying to kind of advance your diplomacy with them. You're trying to move it up, and the card itself will have things that try to bring it down. But as you play these cards, you're trying to move it up to a spot where you have successfully completed your negotiation. And this will take several rounds as you're trying to put those cards out, and the rounds for diplomacy will be limited. You place a die on top to show you essentially how many turns you have or rounds you have left to complete that diplomacy mission. With combat, it's similar, but you don't have the rounds. You just kind of keep going until you either escape or you defeat the enemy. But it's the same thing where you're taking turns placing a number of your cards down that line up with other cards against that enemy. You're inflicting damage on that enemy. You put cubes there to represent the damage you're inflicting on that enemy. And then at the end of your turn, before it goes to the other member of your party, they're going to attack you. They're going to spend a number of, depending on how damaged they are, they're going to expend a number of damage against you. You have to take that damage on your health track. If you can succeed in getting it all the way to its maximum damage number, then that character is defeated. So players are going around and around. They're exploring these various places. They are exploring the journal, going through all of these different choices that they can make, these different paths they can go down. They are gaining traits as they go through as a party. They are battling enemies. They are negotiating with other parties. And they're doing all sorts of different adventures in this game as they try to light those waystones and clear the weirdness from the realm. Now, again, I don't really want to talk here about victory conditions per se. This is more about the journey, and I don't want to spoil anything. So players do all of these actions. They move through this land of Avalon, and they have great adventures in Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin. So, as I say, there's a lot here I don't want to give away. But I do want to show you this book. It is pretty thick. It's got not only the various verses for the locations in it, in the back it's got the boss, the Book of Secrets. And there's many different verses in here that sometimes you will also consult as well. This is a massive, massive book and a massive part of the game. This is a brilliant production. Just like anything you see from Awakened Realms, it's beautiful. You have all sorts of beautiful minis. You have great artwork throughout. You know, the player boards and the stuff you can add onto them is all fantastic. Just stellar production. Across the board, stellar production. This, to me, is, I mean, it feels like a role-playing game where the exploration journal is kind of like the game master in a lot of ways. And the game plays, and I know I was talking to Ray, and Ray told me this. He says it feels like it's a choose-your-own-adventure book. Like, you know, you're read in grade school. You're in those choose-your-own adventures. It's a choose-your-own-adventure that has, of course, combat and dice rolling and skills and traits and all these things. But it really feels like you're playing a role-playing game here. Brilliant production and fun and interesting choices you can make, some more than others. You know, at one point here in an early scenario, you actually get a thing with the red cellophane, so you can actually look over some of the choices which are obscured from you until you find that. So there's a lot of cool components and ideas here, and it never feels gimmicky. It never feels like it's a little over the top. I suppose you could say it's a little overproduced as a whole. There's a lot. I'll tell you, organizing the cards was not fun. Ray actually came over and helped me do it, and that was a chore. But having said that, this is one of those boxes that you open it up and you are just delighted with all the cool stuff that's in it, right? And so I really like that from a aesthetic and a component point of view. First rate. And then what it really comes down to here is, do you like games with a lot of reading that are really heavily story driven, and where it almost feels like when you do those combat encounters and those diplomacy and those things, they're important parts of the game, but at times they almost feel like they're an adjunct to this exploration journal. In fact, I almost feel like you could play the game with just the exploration journal sometimes, right? You couldn't, but I mean, it kind of feels that way sometimes. I like games with a lot of text. I like to be immersed in a game. And so I think this game does that very, very well. I think there's an app, too, you can use. The app, Ray was telling me he was playing around with it, but it's kind of very slow. So it's probably faster to read it yourself. But I got a kick out of this game. I think it's a very interesting game. My problem is, generally speaking, with very few exceptions, I'm not a huge fan of campaign games. I wish this game was more just scenario driven. I mean, there's these 10 chapters. So this is a game you really have to get involved in. This is a lifestyle game. And so from that perspective, it kind of turns me off a little bit. I wish the game were a little more accessible. I wish that maybe you had more chapters, but they were shorter and you could just jump into them as you wanted. To me, that would make the game much more appealing. So as it is, as a campaign game, and where I review so many games, I don't have a lot of time to devote to just one game. So I don't know that I'm going to really dive into this game as much as I could. I'll probably hang on to it for the time being and maybe revisit it here and there, but I don't know that I'm just going to boom, knock it out. And I don't know, I may end up donating it or giving it to a friend or something. We'll see what happens. I like this game a lot. Don't misunderstand me. I think for what it is, it's great. In fact, I'm not aware of any game that does what this game does at this level. The closest thing is Awaken Realms' ISS Vanguard, which is a great science fiction co-op game. They feel very similar to me in respect, although Kings of Ruin feels a little more story-driven with a choose-your-own-adventure stuff. And ISS Vanguard, as good as it is, it's been a while since I've gotten it to the table. I played through the first few missions, and I'd like to get back to it. But again, with campaigns, it's hard for me. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say try it before you buy it. The game is excellent. The game is fun. It's interesting. But my own feelings are where it is so heavy and where it does take so much time to really get into it, they could be drawbacks for people like they're drawbacks for me. So that's why I'm saying try it before you buy it. But if you are somebody that really wants to immerse yourself in a game, if you want to have a great fantasy experience that really is heavily story-driven and you and your friends can really sink your teeth into it, I think you're really going to enjoy Tainted Grail Kings of Ruin. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, I ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. I'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history, fun things like that. I'd ask you to go ahead and subscribe to that channel. It would mean a lot to me. I'd also, I would ask you to click on this video, give us a thumb on Board Game Geek. And if you really do like the content we bring you here, I would humbly ask you to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. I've got a question for you, ladies and gentlemen. If Jim is your nickname, is James your Nicholas name? Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. God knows that I love to fight.
Thank you for ruining my daddy's life.